Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah. Here we're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Beis, and we'll be learning today at Meretz Hashem, Daf Nun Amud Aleph. We pick up on Mem Tes Amud Beis. We're continuing to learn Hilchos Netilas Yadayim, and we pick up today on the very bottom line of Mem Tes Amud Beis, Siman Kuf Nun Tes Sif Hey, bottom line Mem Tes Amud Beis at the Ramah. Now, in the Mechaber here in Sif Hey, we discussed, and we've spoken about this already many times, a kli shetchilas tikunei kach she'enu yachal lamod b'lo smicha. If you have a keli that was made to be used, it's a keli that is not able to support itself, but it was made to be used lekabel mashkim. It definitely was made to be used to hold liquids, but it was made to be used with some kind of external support. Again, I'm going to mention the case of the beautiful crystal glass that has a pointy bottom, and it's made to be inserted into a beautiful brass or silver holder, and that's the way it's used. So this is definitely a kli she'asuya lekabel mashkim. It's definitely a keli that was made to hold liquids, and even though it can't support itself, it was made to be used with an external support. So in that case, the Mechaber said, since it's a kli shetchilas tikunei kach, since that's the way it was made, it is considered to be a kli that's machzik revius, and you could use this kind of keli for netilas yadayim. And if you take a look at the third line from the bottom here in Mem Tes Amud Beis, the last word, mutar litol mimenu. You're allowed to wash the netilas yadayim from such a keli, af al pi she'eino machzik klum, even when it's a type of keli like the kind of showerhead keli that we discussed in the previous year, that really can't hold mayim at all unless you stop up the upper opening with your finger. So really, it's hard to call it a kli shemachzik revius, but it is called a kli shemachzik revius. Why? Because that's precisely the way it's made to be used. It is a keli that's asuya lekabel mashkim. It is a keli that's made to hold liquid. It's made to hold liquid when you stop up the upper opening with your thumb. And therefore, with all of these kinds of kelim, says the Mechaber, mutar litol mimenu, you're allowed to use them for the netilas yadayim, alpha pi she'eino machzik klum, even though really the way they are, they can't hold anything. The shower head type of keli, if you just pour water into the top and you don't stop up the opening, all the water is going to leak out right away. The crystal with the pointy bottom, yeah, you could pour a revius of mayim into it, but if you put it on the table, it's going to fall over, and all of the mayim is going to spill out. So even though these kelim are kelim that seemingly einar machzik klum, but, said the Mechaber, keven she'aseh lekabala b'inyan zeh, since they are made to be makabel mashkim when they're used in the way that they were designed to be used, v'zeh ikar tashmishay, and that's how it was designed. That's the ikar tashmish of this keli. Nikra keli, it is called a keli. So now, against that backdrop, we go to the Ramah here on the bottom line on Mem Tes Amud Beis. Says the Ramah, Haga, v'chol shekain, certainly, kli sheyesh by barza lamata, a keli that has a spigot that you can open and close, right? A spigot, some kind of a faucet, and it's located at the bottom of the keli. So let's imagine an urn, a good old-fashioned Shabbos urn, not the new pump pots. They're not new anymore. I'm dating myself. But the good old-fashioned samovar is a Shabbos urn. So you've got that big keli. It could hold maybe 3 gallons. Some of them in the 60 cup, 200 cup. And you've got a barza, you've got a spigot all the way at the bottom where you have a lever that you push that allows the water to flow out. So essentially, if you think about it, that keli, that urn, it's a kli shemachzik revius. If it can hold 60 cups of water, it's definitely a kli shemachzik revius. But wait a second, it has an opening all the way at the bottom. What's the opening? The opening is the spigot. If the spigot would be in the open position, all of the water would pour out. Says the Ramah, you could certainly use that kind of a keli for the netilas yadayim. V'chol shekain kli sheyesh by barza lamata, certainly you could use a keli that is a spigot at the bottom, ha'elu mitchila nasa lekabel al yedei kach, because it is made to hold 60 cups of water with the spigot closed. So you're right, it has an opening at the bottom. And that spigot, it could be in the open position or in the closed position. If it's in the open position, so then essentially it's a keli that has a hole at the bottom. So what do you mean? If it's in the open position, then it's ein machzik klum. If the spigot is in the open position, you keep pouring water into the top and all the water keeps on flowing out of the spigot at the bottom. So viewed from that perspective, it's a cliche ein machzik klum. But if the spigot is in the closed position, it could hold 60 cups of water. So really, this is very similar to the crystal with the pointy bottom. You take the crystal with the pointy bottom and you put it into the beautiful brass or silver support. So now it's a cliche machzik revius. But if you take it out of the support, it doesn't hold anything. Because if you try to stand it up on the table, it's going to fall over and all the liquid is going to spill out. Yet, you're allowed to use that keli. Why? Because it's tchilas tikunoi kach. It was made from its very creation, from its very inception. It's made to hold a revius when it's used with the holder. So that is a kli shemachzik revius when used the proper way. So to the urn. The urn is a 60-cup urn. What does that mean? It means it's meant to hold 60 cups of water, right? Yeah, it's meant to hold 60 cups of water with the spigot in the closed position. So the barza, the spigot, does not invalidate the keli at the keli. You're not going to look at the urn and say, no, you can't use that for the tilas yadayim. It's not a kli shemachzik revius. What are you talking about? Read the box. Capacity, 60 cups of water, 60 cups. So what do you mean it's not a kli shemachzik revius? Of course it's a kli shemachzik revius. Just the spigot has to be in the closed position. So that's what the Ramah is saying over here. Now let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah's Katan Chav Hey. Kli sheyesh by barza, a keli that is a spigot. Hainu ma shekarin tzapin. The word that they had for spigot was tzapin. Oy ma shekarin handpas. Some kind of a handpas. Sheyesh la yosed milamata. This was a small portable keli that was meant to hold a smaller amount of water. And imagine you have a keli with a I guess maybe a flat bottom, and well, it doesn't have to be a flat bottom. Yeah, a flat bottom. And on the side, there's like a peg. There's kind of like a button sticking out. And that peg, I guess on the inside of the keli it's wide, and maybe it has a rubber washer or something like that, and maybe it's got a spring on it. So when you push it in, it opens up the opening and the water can flow out. Or when you let go, if there's a spring, then it springs back and it closes. Or maybe you have to pull it back with your hand. And so it has an open position and a closed position, just like the spigot on the urn. So says the Mishnah Berurah, also this handpas, or mashakar handpas, sheyesh lo yosed melamata, it has some kind of a peg, low down, ubishasha roitza lital mimenu, when you want to take water from this keli, doicha hayosed lamaila. He says you push the peg up. V'nishbach hamayim, somehow that opens up an opening, and now the water flows out. And then, when you want to stop the flow of water, apparently, we're going to see from the Magen Avram, that he's going to quote now, when you want the water to flow out, you have to push the peg up. When you want the water to stop, you have to push the peg down. So now, says the Mishnah Berurah, very interesting Magen Avram. He says like this, Rak, shetzarich li zoher, when it comes to this handpas, or any other kind of keli that has a spigot where you have to open it and close it. You see, our urns, you don't have to open and close. You push the handle down, the water flows out. As soon as you let go, the handle springs back up and the valve closes. That's not going to have the issue that we're going to speak about now. What we're speaking about now is where you have some kind of a valve or a spigot where you have to open it and then you have to close it. Says the Magen Avram that presents a new problem. Now, I'll tell you what the problem is first outside, and it's a complicated issue that we're really going to get to in depth in Siman Kuf Samach Beis. What's the issue? The issue is like this. Let's again envision what goes on by Netilas Yadayim. So we have Stam Yadayim. Stam Yadayim Ashniyos L'Tuma. right? That was the great Gzeres Chachamim that they made Stam Yadayim Shniyos B'Shem Srach Truma. We want to make sure that the Kahanim are always going to wash their hands before they handle Truma, so it shouldn't bring to Hefsid Truma when a Kayin touches Truma with dirty hands. So we want to make sure the Kahanim are going to wash their hands. So we were geyser on Stam Yadayim that they're Shniyos, and now not only Kahanim have to wash their hands, because if not, they're going to touch Truma and they're going to make it a Shlishi, but even Yisraelim that are going to eat Chulin, and by Chulin there's no such thing as a Shlishi, even Yisraelim have to wash their hands before they got their Kaveya Suda on Pas, so that everybody should be used to washing their hands before they eat, and therefore the Kahanim will always make sure to wash their hands before they eat Truma. That's the great Gzeira that we have over here of the Tilas Yadayim. Now let's imagine the performance of the Tilas Yadayim. I have my right hand, Stam Yadayim, it's a Sheni. I take my keli, I fill it up with water, and I pour from my left hand onto my right hand. Now that pour is what we're going to be calling Mayim Rishonim. That's the first water that I pour onto my right hand. Now when I pour that water onto my right hand, you know what happens? The water removes the tumah from the hand. So now the hand is no longer tameh. But the mayim that's on the hand, if I wash with less than a revius of mayim, if I wash with a revius of mayim, so then the tumah is gone. I pour a revius or more from my left hand onto my right hand, there's no tumah left. The tumah goes off my hand, and even the water that's left on my right hand, the wetness on my right hand, is also tahar. Because when you wash with a revius or more of mayim, the tumah is puff, the tumah is gone. But let's say I wash with less than a revius. If I pour less than a revius from using my left hand, I take the keli and I pour less than a revius on my right hand, then what happens is the tumah goes off my hand. But the water that's on my hand is still tameh. For that reason, we wash mayim shniyim. After we wash once, and the tumah goes off the hands onto the water, now we wash a second time. And the mayim shniyim removes the mayim rishonim. Then we go ahead and we dry our hands in a final move to make sure that there's no mayim rishonim left. Okay, what does that have to do with what we're talking about here? So, says the Mishnah Berurah, brings down to the Magen Avram. The Magen Avram says an interesting thing. The Magen Avram says, if you're using a keli that has a spigot for Netilas Yadayim, so the Magen Avram is afraid that what might happen is this. You're going to take your right hand, you're going to position it under the spigot. You're going to take your left hand, you're going to open the spigot. Now, the Mayim Rishonim, the water is going to flow out of the spigot, and it's going to go on your hand. Okay, now you're going to take the spigot, and you're going to close the spigot, let's say, right? But now you might run into a new problem. What you might end up doing is, you might take your hand, after you washed the Mayim Rishonim on your right hand, what happens if you touch the spigot with your right hand? Now, exactly why you would do that, I'm not sure. I would think the way you would do it is, you would position your right hand under the spigot, you would use your left hand, and you would open the spigot, let the Mayim Rishonim go on, and then close it, and then open the spigot again, and let the Mayim Shniyim go on to the right hand, and then close it. What the Magen Avram seems to be afraid of is, maybe what you're going to do is, you're going to open the spigot, let the Mayim Rishonim go on to the right hand, and then with your right hand, with your wet right hand, your right hand that's wet from the Mayim Rishonim, you might go ahead and close the spigot. So again, the way you started this was, you positioned your right hand under the spigot. You used your left hand and you opened the spigot. The Mayim Rishonim went onto your right hand. Now you take your wet right hand that's wet from the Mayim Rishonim, and you close the spigot. Now you have to wash Mayim Shniyim. Now you take your left hand again, and you go to the spigot, and you open the spigot in order to wash the Mayim Shniyim on the first hand. Now you know what just happened? What just happened was, okay, what do we call this? Cross-contamination. Think about food preparation. We've got cross-contamination going on over here because you touched the spigot with your right hand that was wet from the Mayim Rishonim. Now, the Mayim Rishonim have Tumah in them if you washed with less than a revius. So when you take your right hand in between the Mayim Rishonim and the Mayim Shneim and you close the spigot, you are putting water onto the spigot that's tummy. Okay, why is that a problem? Well, now you're going to take your left hand and you're going to open the spigot again. Oh, by doing that, you just touched the Mayim Tameim. You just touched the Mayim Rishonim that came off of your right hand. You just touched them with your left hand. Now that Mayim Rishonim has Tumah on it. So now your left hand has Mayim Tameim. It has Mayim Rishonim that are Tameh. Is now on your left hand. Now you'll say, okay, so what's the problem? The next thing you're going to do, you're going to finish washing your right hand. Now you're going to wash your left hand. So, okay. So when you wash your left hand, the Mayim Rishonim that came from the first hand will get washed off. Why is that a problem? The answer is because in Kuf Samach Beis, we're going to see that this idea that the Mayim Shneim wash away the Mayim Rishonim, that's only when you're talking about Mayim Rishonim that became Tameh from the hand that they were poured onto. You see, we have a klal in Taharis that ein Mayim mitaharim Mayim. Water that's tar cannot be mitaher water that's tameh. Now, essentially, we are doing that in the Netilas Yadayim because we pour the Mayim Rishonim on our hands. We say that the Mayim Rishonim have Tumah in them. Then we pour Mayim Shneim on it to wash away and be Matayr the Mayim Rishonim. So, what happened to Ein Mayim Matar Mayim? The simple answer is that by the Gzeir of the Netilas Yadayim, what the Chachamim said, since all of the Tumah is the Tumah that came off of the hand, and we're using the Netilas Yadayim to wash the Tumah off the hand, when we wash Mayim Shneim to wash away the Mayim Rishonim, that's considered an extension of the Netilas Yadayim, of the original Netilas Yadayim of the hand. But that's only true when the Mayim that's Tameh, that's on the hand, the Tumah came from that hand itself. But in the scenario that we just discussed, that's not the case. In this scenario, what's happening is, I now have Mayim Tameim on my left hand that are Tameh because of the Tumah on my right hand. So I don't have Mayim Tameim on my left hand that are Tameh because of my left hand. I have Mayim Tameim on my left hand that are Tameh because of Tumah from my right hand. I washed Mayim Rishonim on my right hand. That Mayim is Tameh. I touched the barza with my right hand. I touched the spigot. Then I touched the spigot with my left hand. So now I have residual Mayim Rishonim from my right hand on my left hand. But that Mayim Rishonim is not Tameh because of my left hand. It's Tameh because of my right hand. Now the Mayim Rishonim and the Mayim Shneim that I'm going to pour on my left hand cannot be Metaher that Tumah. The only way I could be Metaher the Tumah on my left hand now is by drying off my left hand completely so that none of that Mayim Rishonim is on my hand, and then washing the Netilas Yadayim. So says the Magen Avram, because of this whole complicated sugya, says the Magen Avram, if you're going to wash the Netilas Yadayim from a keli that has a barza, that has a spigot, where you might run into this problem, the eitzah not to run into this problem is make sure that you wash with the revius. Because if you wash with the revius, you don't get into this problem. If you wash with a revius, the tumah goes poof, and the tumah is no longer in the mayim. So the mayim rishonim are not tameh. You wash with a revius onto the right hand. now the mayim, even the residual mayim rishonim, have no tumah on them because he washed with more than a revius. Very complicated, and it's just a short little line and a half over here in the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah like this. He says, Rak shetzarich lizoyer. Okay. There's a tangential piece here first. I jumped the gun a little bit. I'm just going to read again from the beginning of Eis Katan Chav Hey. Kli sheish by barza, hayna mashikar tzapid or mashikar handfas, sheyesh lo yosed milamata, ubishasha roitza lital mimenu. When you want to wash the tilas kedai from this keli, what you do is doicha hayosed lamayla. You push the peg up, v'nishpach hamayim, the water comes out, and then you shut it. Rak, says the Mishnah Berurah, first of all, shetzarich lizayer lahachsir, you have to make sure to push the peg back down and close the valve, b'chol shvicha u'shvicha, for each pour that you need. So in other words, you have to open the valve for the mayim rishonim, then you have to close the valve, then you have to open the valve again for the mayim shniim. Each pour that you need for the tilas yadayim, you've got to open the valve distinctly for that pour. And the reason is because we're going to see a halacha shortly, that when you wash the tilas yadayim, one of the requirements that you need is you need that the water comes onto your hand mikayach gavra, from an action that you did. Not that there's a faucet running and you stuck your hand under it. So the water was running. It's not mikayach gavra. So what we need is that for each pour, you open the valve. That's kayach gavra. Now you shut the valve. Now you need another pour for mayim shniyim. You open the valve again. That's kayach gavra again. So that's the first thing that the Mishnah Berurah says here. Rak shetzarich lizar lahachse b'chol shvicha u'shvicha. You have to make sure to close the valve between each pour. U'kedlekaman b'say siftes. And now what we just described before, V'ayin b'Magen Avram, and he says, take a look at the Magen Avram, Lekamon Siman Kuf Samach Beis Sif Katan Yud, who's going to tell us in the very complex Siman Kuf Samach Beis, the Kishenoitel Me Handfas, when you wash from one of these handfases, where you have this spigot that you have to open and close, Tzarich Lital Revius B'Basachas Alayad. You have to make sure to wash your hand with at least a revius. And it's because of what I explained. You have to make sure that you wash with at least a revius so that the tumah goes puff and you don't have this problem of the tumah on the mayim rishonim. Eis Katan Chavav. The Ramah said we're dealing with a keli sheyesh by barza lamata. It has a spigot at the bottom. Ritzon Eloymar, what the Ramah wants to say over here is afilu hachi. Ritzon Eloymar af b'shuleha. You could use this keli that has a barza, even if the barza is mamish all the way at the floor of the keli. Why is that a chiddush? Because now what's going on is, that means that the barza, the opening of the barza, in that case, if it's all the way at the floor of the keli, so that means you really would be tempted to look at this as a keli that's not machzik revius, right? Because the opening is all the way in the floor. Yet, says the Ramah, you could use it even if the barza is in the floor. Afilu hachi lo nispatli mimenu shem kli al yidei nekav zeh. The hole that's made. I just lost my sound recording. All right. I don't know why. I don't know exactly what happened, but my separate audio recording just got lost. All right. Okay. So again, Nachzor Linyonenu. Even though the opening of the barza is in the floor of the keli, says the Mishnah Berurah, it still doesn't lose the din of a keli. That opening does not make an ois keli. Umutter litail, and you're allowed to use this keli for netilas yadayim, bein derech habarza, whether you want to use the valve, ubein lamayla derech piachavis, or you want to wash from the top of the chavis. It's considered a keli because it is a kli that's machzik revius, because it's trilas tikunai kach. It's made to go ahead and hold a revius when the spigot is closed. So when the spigot is closed, you could use this. You could pour from the top. You could open the valve, and you could wash netilas yadayim from the spigot. You can wash from wherever you want. And the rationale is nasa. The same halacha would be, let's say you have a keli, and it gets a hole. And it gets a hole that makes it ois keli. Right? So you've got a kli cheres, and you get a hole in the kli cheres, and it's the size that we said that makes it ois keli. That was the size that it's nikev bekoinis mashka. It's a big enough hole that if you put it into water, water is going to penetrate and come into the keli. And let's make it even worse. And the keli, the hole is so low down in the keli that from the level of the hole to the bottom, the keli can't be machzik or revius. So this keli is mamish ois keli. But now you go ahead and you use that opening and you put in a barza. You put in a spigot at that opening. Says the Mishnah Berurah, if you get a hole in a keli, and it's a hole that's so big, it makes it ois keli. And you will fix a spigot to the hole, so now you could use it. That's called tchilas tikunakach. Because now you are making it into a keli that's meant to be used with a barza. So nasikli al yedezeh. So you're making it into a keli. It was tchilas tikuna is made to be bekabel mashkim in this way when the spigot is closed. Ritzoyna loymar al yedei a barza shetochav sham. Because there's a barza, because there's a spigot in the keli, machzik kamayim, it holds water, shelo yishbechu derech hanekev. The barza, the spigot, is what makes that the water shouldn't pour out of the hole that the spigot is in. Umuchach me'achroinim, says the Chavetz Chaim. It is clear from the achroinim. The bekli shal cheres, if you're dealing with an earthenware keli, tzarich sheyeh barza muhudekes. If you put in a barza, you put in a spigot into an earthenware keli, the spigot has to be firmly affixed to the keli. There shouldn't be any leaking around the barza, or the barza itself shouldn't leak. Tip, because it does leak, drip, 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 a constant drip. So then, remember what we said. We said if you have a kli cheres that has a hole in it, and it goes drip, drip, drip with water coming out, that means that the hole is big enough that if you pushed the keli into water, water would penetrate. So that's a hole that's big enough to invalidate the keli for the tilas yadayim. That hole is big enough to make it ois kli for the tilas yadayim. So now let's say you have an earthenware keli, and it has a spigot. Now, where the spigot is, there's a hole in the keli. The spigot, when it's in the closed position, closes off the hole. But let's say the spigot is a faulty spigot. So we all know what leaky faucets look like. Drip, 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 drip. So let's say you've got a spigot in an earthenware keli, and even when it's in the closed position, it goes drip, 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 drip. So that means you've got a hole in the keli that's big enough to invalidate it as a keli for the tilas yadayim. And in that case, says the Mishnah Berurah, va'afilu lital derech hanekev aser. You wouldn't be allowed to even wash from that hole. Af shemasik revius ben hanekev alamata. Even if the keli could hold a revius from the level of the hole and down. That's according to the achronim that we saw earlier, who are machmir and hold that when it comes to a kli cheres, if there's a hole in the kli cheres, even if the keli could be masik a revius from the level of the hole and down, it makes it ois keli. Ubishar kalim, but if you're talking about other types of kalim, not earthenware kalim, mutter lital derech hanekev in machzik revius bimeno lamata. If you're dealing with a metal keli, so okay, if the keli could hold a revius from the level of the leaky spigot and down, so then it's still a keli. Well, lefizeh b'handfas shalanu, says the Chavetz Chaim, by the hand passes that they had in his day, shahabarza b'shulei akli milamata, where the spigot is on the floor of the keli all the way down at the bottom, imena mehudekes, if that spigot is not firmly in place to the keli, umetafte v'mayim derech sham, and the water is dripping, It's not considered a keli anymore, until you repair it, and it would be usher to wash from that keli. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to stop over here, which I feel bad about because I missed shir yesterday. I would have liked to go weiter, but I have to stop over here. I have something else that's interfering, unfortunately. I have to stop here, and we'll continue next time in Yirtzeh Hashem from the top line of Nun Amud Aleph with Sivav. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The source of limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Rosh Hashanah should send Yeshua Sefros Parnasset Shedruchim to all those in need, and we should be zeicher to see the Bias Gal Tzedek. And Herav Yameinu Amen. Be well.